Okay. Thanks everyone for coming in. Good morning again. We will get started with what we've got on the agenda. So,
maybe we could do introductions first.
sure.
If
Okay.
you don't mind, just because there's some new
Yeah.
faces.
Yep.
So you can start with introductions. We'll start over here.
I'm Peggy Ross-Jones. We just went through a name change to Memorial Behavioral Health, was Mental Health Center.
All right.
Tony DiVittorio with Blue Cat from Blue Island.
Stephanie Brown with Challenge Unlimited and Residential Options. Andy Nesbitt with Community Services and Benefits.
John Hillscamp with Community Link. Brian Dowd with Spark.
Sandy Wood, Ridgeway.
Katie Kistler, Community Support Systems.
Gus Vandenbrinks or Thomas Son.
Cam Garland, Cornerstone Services.
Ben Stores with Cornerstone.
Mary Miller, Hope Institute.
John Pingo, Golden Clover Center.
Hope Juno, Golden Clover Center.
Kyle Rick, the Arc of the Quad Cities area.
Kim Taylor, Faco Enterprises.
Brave with Fort Manor and Southern Illinois Community Support Services.
Trill Smith with
Susan Kaufman, Clearbrook.
Sheila Lulo, Clearbrook.
Dave Baker, Open Door.
Ian Fitzgerald, Horizon House.
Nancy Davis, Mosaic.
Dale Morrissey, Developmental Services Center.
Jeff Stouter, Credit Services. I'm Greg Shaver from Centralia.
Anyone else hiding back there?
Like the kids in the back that
I
don't want
know.
to get in trouble.
The back
We're
of
gonna make
the
you all
bus.
move to the front row now. All right.
yeah.
Go for it. I mean, I think Roxy, you're going to give an update on the Bills, and maybe Josh and Cyrus. Maybe you guys are all going to tag team.
Yeah, so just a few bill updates. I sent out a rather detailed description of what some changes at OIG have resulted in that is going to indirectly, directly impact some of the suggestions and proposals we've had with them and that we had in our bill for OIG streamlining. So I can run through that a little bit. I don't want to read through all of it as I, want to save time and because I also sent it out. But I want to bring your attention to the significant staffing increase that they've made, which if you put it in the context of how the last decade has been for the way they've operated and how that has impacted almost everything that they do and then impacted you guys, by the end of this calendar year, they'll be at 35 investigators, which is almost full staff. And for the last decade, they've on average had 17 investigators for the state. So that's a pretty significant increase. Four of those investigators four of the new investigators are filling retiree spots. So, but the 10 others that they've hired, so 14 new investigators in total, the 10 others are brand new. So those were spots that haven't been filled for however long, probably a decade. So coupled with the fact that Rule 50 was expanded in, I think it was 10 years ago in 2006, they said that the influx of investigations plus their huge deficit of investigators prompted this and really awful operations that they were, that was happening for them and then translated to really bad outcomes for you guys. And so they're really hoping that these changes are going to create a lot of positive change on your end, and that you guys may have already seen some small improvements, but that the full effect of change won't start to be really realized fully until the end of the calendar year. But those are some major changes that have happened, along with some consolidation of offices up north. that they're hoping also helps, and they're hiring another nurse that's going to float between the offices, all the regional offices, I mean. Those are just some of the highlights of that update. Does anyone have any other questions after reading it or looking through it? Does anyone have any questions about some of those details?
Roxy, do you and Josh, I mean, I know that IARF had a series of meetings with OIG, you know, addressing, you know, their inability to do expedited investigations that have been hanging out for years at some point. Do you have any sense that this was in reaction to
It was a
some of
little
our
bit.
efforts, or what, you know, I'm just curious about why it was the way that it was for so long, and now all of a sudden we can move forward and at an odd time. I mean, I'm just saying from a
So they
financial
mentioned
standpoint.
that we did have several substantive meetings in the summer as a result of some, you know, recommendations that we had internally, and then we put them out to OIG. But then also they said the governor's office is very keen on having OIG maintain its mission, not superficially, which it really has been in the last decade. You know, they make everything important, and so nothing's important, and things fall through the cracks in that way. And so because of the way they've been staffed, and because of the way that has trickled down to lots of other problems, they don't want to. They said they're investing in their office in order. Obviously, they hired 14 new investigators and will be training them and improving all these things. So I think it was in the governor's office's interest to, as part of their streamlining, but also still, you know, keeping everything safe in the communities.
So I'm assuming besides for the investigators, are they adding anything to the review process? Because I know when we talk to investigators, they'll say, I'm done, I've got it submitted, it's sitting somewhere for review.
Right.
And I asked that because the letter that they sent us yesterday, out of the 2378, they say they have closed 2283, which only leaves 90 across the state for FY16 that they're saying are still open. I can guarantee you 10 of those are ours, and I find that hard to believe because we have 10 for FY16 that we have not got a response on. So I think those numbers are misleading. Maybe the investigator has completed their investigation. Maybe they've completed their report, but it has not gone through the review process. And it's not, and that's what, you know, 9 months later you get a unfounded and unsubstantiated. So that's where they're saying the bottleneck is too. The investigators on it.
They told us for this year so far. I was just on the phone the other day.
Yeah. Could you repeat those numbers again? Because
Well,
I think they're a little bit different.
Yes, we're different than what you've got. The letter they sent that I got via email yesterday, it says FY16, they opened 2378 and have completed 2283. So that leaves like 90 cases that they're that current on. That those are the only ones they have left for FY16.
So they gave us just slightly different numbers than that. Nothing really significantly different, but I can't speak to how that turnaround is really. I mean, they did say they hired new admin staff.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem that they highlighted, that like it's this big funnel that no matter how many investigators you've got that are, you know, quickly conducting the investigations, they still have to be, you know, funneled down to the right office manager or the, you know, admin to file it. That being said, they are shortening reports so that it takes less time. Again, this is all happening like as, you know, concurrently, and you probably, like they said, you won't see these effects for a little bit. So like you said, those outstanding cases that you're waiting on might still be outstanding for a bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think just from our perspective, that they're looking at the whole system and not just the investigators. And I assume that they are, but we just don't want to forget that.
How they're defining completed.
Yeah.
So given that, our bill suggested streamlining things, training investigators more consistently, up timelines in that they would give regular updates to you guys so that it's not solely incumbent upon you to call your regional office and say, hey, what's going on with this? This has been outstanding for 3 months or whatever. A lot of those were changed a bit because of all of this information they gave us. One thing we still maintain, though, is that we want, and their view is they don't, of course, want to change anything legislatively. They don't want to have issues with Rule 50. And they did say that the governor's office is interested in for them to streamline Rule 50. So they don't want to go into Rule 50 and define things more specifically, which is one thing that we also asked of them in the way of definitions. Because of the way they so broadly define things, it just like, it's a catch-all and it creates problems. But so what our original recommendations have basically whittled down to is asking for regular updates for you guys. So their IT department's already been looking at that, and they said they have capability to automate some of these updates. For example, we suggested after a case has, after 3 months or 60 days, I'm sorry, have lapsed, for there to be monthly updates thereafter for you guys. And then if you want anything else, of course, you can call and ask about that in your regional office. But to date, those kinds of updates have not really been happening ever, and it's just sort of hanging out there and you never know what's going on. So we, like I said, a lot of our suggestions became somewhat neutralized because of all of these changes that have happened. So we're counting on that more open communication as opposed to this like one-sided, you guys give them all this information and you don't hear anything type of thing. So
if I could, I would just say, and Josh, please correct me if I'm characterizing this wrong, but the way I'd characterize what's transpired is we put a bill out there, one, to garner a legislative champion on the issue and to bring attention to an issue that we've been discussing with DHS OIG for quite some time and not really realized substantial outcomes. So what I saw, you know, Roxy and I spent about an hour talking to DHS OIG last week when they shared with us last information about what they're doing to try to mitigate some of the concerns that we've continually raised for months. They are doing, and they say they have now garnered the support of not only the secretary but the governor's office, and that's one of the reasons why they were able to hire 17 new investigators, replace 4 retiring and bring on 13 new ones. And I think we've succeeded, in my opinion, of bringing a higher level of scrutiny to the process in which we've been trying to engage them on in these continual discussions. And I think we've seen some progress. And from listening to them, they were, in my own personal opinion, they obviously were sympathetic to a degree to the problems that we've raised, but it's always come back to an issue of staffing with them. That is constantly what we hear from all the other state agencies. And I believe that we've succeeded in getting them to hire more investigators. We have garnered a legislative champion in the Senate who is affiliated with the same political party as the administration and has really been a bulldog on this issue. He's been very good about bringing it up in committee hearings with other legislators, etc. He's on our side. Chapin Rose has been very good. And I'm hopeful, and please, this is the part that I would like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it would be an even better outcome if we get to the point in which DHS OIG is doing all of the investigations, and we don't have to go to that solution of allowing providers to do some of the own investigations on their own. You know, that's to me what I saw as one of those unfunded mandates, us trying to be helpful and us trying to work down that backlog, but why should we do it if we don't have to? And
I'm not sure I agree or disagree if I understood that. That's sitting here earlier part of the conversation. I'd be okay with that if he knocked off the trivial ones.
Okay.
I would rather reserve the right to say, somebody's called him a big baby, let me handle it administratively, then say everything's going to go to the OIG.
That's the discussions I had with some of the roads called again. The ones that we can take care of the small ones and also the repeat ones we know that are just over and over, just the same person because they know they can cause that there is some real efficiencies to that. There's a lot more efficiency saving time there then having them come in and do that, because it takes a long time. So when we had our own trained people to do that, it was much more expedient than, and of course, the major ones, I gave you the terms. There's the terms of ones that have to, they're life threatening and that type of stuff. And the sexual ones and that type of stuff.
They were never, when we were part of passing a legislation, that was never intended, they're gonna deal with trivial stuff. Never.
Well, and there is that follow-up.
That's
I mean, I
included in
think
the bill.
if we open that door up for them to deal with things that are pretty trivial, I mean, there's like a plan of correction or a written response that has to go back and forth, and then they accept it, they don't accept it, and then you get, then BQM comes in and they do a sample poll, and you have to demonstrate that you're in compliance. And while I appreciate that for the big things, the important allegations, I would have no appreciation for that for someone who, if I called Art a big baby. So, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of this that we can manage and that we do manage. And I think clearly defining what they do and what we do, I think is important moving forward.
So that was a conversation we had with them both on the call last week and with Senator Rose. And he was very much interested in progressing to a long-term transformation of how OIG conducts all of this. And I think it was Nancy that I've talked to you a bit about how OIG equivalents happen in other states and how those investigations are conducted. And minor things like this aren't even, I think it was in Indiana, you talked about that this is like dealt with their version of BQM, where there's already a regular rapport and they're more aware of what goes on. And it's like you're already reporting. And so something this minor would be under their purview. It would not even be considered something that's on the radar of OIG and in their jurisdiction, while it is here. And that's a big backlog because things like that can happen, like such minor things like how you were just, the example you gave could happen so often that.
It is also all electronic.
Well, we've threatened to have a critical incident reporting system in Illinois. We threaten to do that every once in a while, but we never actually get it done. So
They said they are looking at encrypting their email to make that available and not have it be through the Postal Service, because that's obviously not efficient either. Yeah.
My notion would be to free them up. We handle the trivial, so they could also handle the fraud and home-based services. And they could investigate that.
Oh boy. I'm not going to touch that yet.
Even though the trivial ones, the time, it's not only the staff time that this takes up, but the staff that are taken out of, on small things, that are taken out of capacity to serve or have to be relocated to another program.
Right.
Is the thing that's costing us over and over. So if we can take care of the small ones ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and have the training, there was a real method there when they said we're no longer going to train your inside people. That was the message saying,
So their comment to us on the providers taking on investigations of those trivial allegations was that they said that they are finding that their staff are spending more time reviewing your internal handling of the issue than they would themselves dealing with it head on.
Outright.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And frankly, that's crap. I mean, you send that stuff in, they're gonna use that sitting at their desk. It takes them an hour and a half to drive to my place. So,
I guess the big problem that also, Cyrus, is that to be real honest, I've heard other providers they're not reporting it at all. That's worse than at least having an internal system to address it. If they're not reporting, because they're saying, I can't keep it staffed. And if we get to that, then you really do have to do it.
well, I think the other thing that we have to be careful about is that we don't in any fashion abdicate our own administrative responsibilities. If I have a staff member who has abused a client, I guarantee you they are terminated long before OIG hits the premises.
That's right. I can say, I think every provider here would tell you, within a couple, 3 days of any event occurring, we've already made a decision.
Right.
We've done our administrative thing. I refuse to call anything abuse because that's a definition that OIG uses. And if they come back 9 months later and hear a case and say there's not enough evidence and they throw it out, I'm hanging out there saying, well, I said it was abuse, no, he didn't. So
Then what?
I simply match it against our mission and say it's a failure of best practice or failure to honor the mission, but take administrative action nonetheless.
Here's another thing they should tell us. They should go to all the providers who have never reported abuse in the building.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's a
That's what they should spend some time.
that's what we've tried to communicate to them, that they're by elevating everything to high importance and they're letting other things fall through the cracks, like they're not prioritizing the way they should be. And that was a big motivation for us to define certain like minor, what was it? We suggested 3 different levels of I guess severity for a case.
Mhm.
And their heads just about spinned off when we said that, when we proposed that, because they were like, well, this is so problematic and we can't ever define these things this specifically. And the governor's office actually wants us to streamline. And so this goes in the opposite direction. And they somehow don't understand that would actually,
If
well,
done correctly,
I think
it's
that just
streamlined.
truly translates to them not trusting the system.
Right
Still,
now,
is what it
their
is.
agency in public health already does that. The IARF. I mean, they categorize severity, how quickly they need to come out. Is it 7 days? Is it 30 days? Is it immediate? I mean, I'm not,
Or not at
I
all.
think I would never suggesting we look at a public health system, but,
But the expectation is there for the agency to immediately take action, immediately investigate, immediately take action, ensure that proper protections are in place, and then they either come out or they don't come out, but at their annual
or
visit,
even if they do
they
come
do an
out,
audit
that's
of
ranked by
your follow-up,
severity,
right.
How quickly
Yeah.
they come out. Or they do it at an annual survey. They follow up, like you were suggesting.
Right.
Members, somebody just follow up on the minor.
I will say that we did on several occasions early on in this kind of more communicative process, starting in the summer, talk about the IDPH process, because that's so familiar to all of you. And why wouldn't we already just kind of, and they were not, to them, they're very different. They're cops. They're not IDPH. And so they don't at all want to like make themselves similar to that system, regardless of the fact that it would be efficient for both parties and a win-win, but they don't want to equate themselves to IDPH. Was our sense. Right. Yes.
Our local investigator retired about 6 months ago. So I asked him, how many of your cases, what's the board look at? 95% when I look at it, junk. Complete waste of my time.
Yeah.
And maybe it's 90%, but it's a very small number. Of the ones he has to look at, he said, it's pretty serious stuff. But call someone's name, don't even call me for stuff, but he knows he has to go through the process.
Right. Well, and when that's what, going back to our like division of the different levels of severity, when their response to categorizing cases like along those lines, something that's minor, their response was, well, we don't actually know if it's minor. Like they say, well, we could dig deeper and there could be a bigger problem. And so they're still so worried about covering their.
But you can handle that by frequent,
Right.
there's all kinds of responses that happen.
So it's basically their response that what they've done is going to take care of it, and that's kind of the end of it, is Senator Rose kind of out of the picture now too, or.
So we need to bring this back to his office. His legislative staff was on this call when we talked about all of these changes, and Bill Diggins from OIG reported all of this to us. So he's not out of the loop, but as far as like a firm next step of what's going to happen with this bill, we still have to talk to him about that. So
He actually tried to address this when we did the streamlining, and I remember he had a meeting with the secretary and OIG, and they literally convinced him that he would just be personally responsible when someone died for doing this. So I mean, they're definitely they just want to do it that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just was curious about whether there's any help, but it sounds like probably not.
Would it be helpful to you, and I know I missed some of these meetings, but you take what some of the folks have had here in terms of next steps, put 4 or 5 people together and give them our methodology. You give them, take what in the end is, package it, say, this is, we appreciate the dialogue, this is what we had in mind. But in doing something, give them something substantial to say no to.
It might help when you had that process, you gave it, shaking, so you could look at that too.
I wonder if you could share a few examples of this. Say, hey, all right, this is something that's not worth investigating. And this probably is.
We did that not in like Senator Rose's presence. It was more just like when we were talking to OIG, and to them, that's still very like case by case. And it's not indicative of a systems issue to them. And so they don't feel that going into Rule 50 and changing things is something that they want to do.
But see, that's the same gal, she said it from first day met.
Lois.
So somebody from Demas's staff has to be in the room with you. It can't just be you and them.
Right,
anymore.
right.
Yeah.
Right, self-serve.
It has to go beyond that.
I think even in Indiana, and we have ICF and we have waiver, so they are 2 different systems. But the waiver is, I mean, we turn everything in. We have 5 days to turn around an investigation. If we need an extension, we ask for one. So we're this electronic system, we're reporting back and forth continuously until it's done. And then we send it in, and I'm really I can't think of more than, they almost never come out. What they do is they look at our investigation and will come back and tell us maybe what we need to do differently. But I think, you know, we have trained investigators, we do a good job, and they really, it's not like there's this triage. I mean, if we have a death and we do a good investigation, they don't come out and look at it.
Oh my God.
They will come out possibly, I'm just trying to think of a time they ever have, and if it goes to a higher level, if family is involved, if someone else, you know, gets involved. And I'm not saying that their system is flawless, but I don't understand the state wanting to look at every little thing, because they do miss the big fix. And possibly in Indiana, they should be coming out on every death investigation. You know, that's not a natural causes, but they don't. They read our investigation, they determine if it's done correctly, and they follow up on the licensure visits. And I would bet you that we do not have any more rampant abuse in Indiana than you do here. I mean, that's not my experience overseeing those.
So
Right.
what's the next steps here with OIG?
Do you want to comment on what do you think is?
I think you guys, Cyrus and Roxy, are making progress with the application of the bill. I think the bill's a good egg, and we're trying to do some things. As I was telling Carl, and it's our news as well, they will not change their mandate or agree to in that office unless they're directed to. So that's always going to be what we run into. I think we're making progress, and next step is to report back to the sponsor. And figure out what he wants to do, because he's the ultimate arbiter of whether or not this bill moves.
Okay,
Do you
are
wanna talk
there
about
other
PNA?
DD bill updates that
me
you
to
want to
talk
give? I see children's group homes, PNA, MedPass, and DT, so.
So children's group homes bill, we are talking this afternoon with DCFS legislative office and legal about the content of the bill, which is also has to do with streamlining licensure and certification. And as it stands, they oppose it. So we're going from there. We don't know any details beyond other than it's a turf war, quote unquote. And our suggestions, John, for kicking over the DCFS licensure process for child group homes to look like the better operating, not good, but better operating SILA model, to them is like they're afraid of letting go of, you know, their responsibilities over child group homes, which they wouldn't lose because they're still go in when there's abuse and things like that. But as far as the licensing goes, it just doesn't make sense how it's structured now. So today is when we're having a call this afternoon with them about it. So other than knowing they oppose it, we don't know much more. But so that's that. Do you want to talk about P&A?
Yeah, I'll do P&A. The P&A issue, as you all know, is ICFDD and SILA were walked up to $60 a month, and then that was brought back by the administration. So this session, there were two bills put out there, one from another group that put both those settings back up to $60 a month. And then there was our bill, which tied an individual's P&A to 15% of their SSI. We've run into some confrontation both with the administration and just discussions with the other group that is proposing their legislation on how to move forward on an agreed to bill, because everyone's in agreement that we want to put the P&A back up to at least $60 a month. So where we stand right now with the association, and we have been working with another group, IPAD-U, who we worked with in putting forward our initial legislation, is that we see that there is the department has gone neutral on this idea of going back up to $60 a month, but we are not comfortable with the notion of giving up right now on legislating a mechanism to continually grow P&A over time. We don't want to come back in 10, 20 years and continue to ask for increases of the P&A. So we have not given up on that notion. We are working on an amendment with our House sponsor, Representative Kelly Cassidy, on a notion of bringing the P&A back up to $60 a month and enacting a mechanism that will allow it to grow over time, tying yearly increases to a particular cost index. So we're working on the amendment, and that's kind of where we stand right now until the legislature decides to come back.
Okay, any questions on P&A? All right, who's doing MedPass and DT?
I can talk a bit about that. So an interesting, I guess, consideration is that DHS didn't brief the ANA about this at all, really. ANA. So they were in effect blindsided a bit by this, and right, it's a little bizarre to us why that didn't occur. I can't at least figure out why they didn't do that. And so it's a little bit stalled, I would say. I don't know that it's making any movements yet, primarily because I believe it's the Nurses Act. Is that correct?
Yes, the Nurse Practice Act.
Nurse
probably.
Practice Act is, Josh, am I correct in saying it's sunsetting in 2017? So there's lots of changes on their end that are happening regarding that because of all the different moves to community integrated stuff and services, and supports that will influence its new form. So right now, MedPass and DTs, I don't believe there's a lot of movement. Josh, would you comment on that?
I think the nurses will pressure.
I think it's
More bluntly.
We should try to pass it. I would not want to be tucked into the middle of that. I know where the coming from, but I would still press. But this is not a big ticket item. There's precedent for it, and we might have to work around her a little bit too.
Well, and I think that, with some of what we've been talking about in the Innovative Flexible Day Services group, the more that we focus on, models that are in the community, it's just not practical for a nurse to follow someone around. So we talk inclusion and community activities, but oh, hey, wait, you either have to come back to your site to get your medicine, or we have to have a nurse going with you. I think that we can't talk out of both sides of our mouth. We have to figure out what we want and how we can achieve
Yeah, and it's been brought up multiple times at our Employment First meetings.
Yeah.
This legislation is, this is a mechanism to help us realize Employment First in Illinois. So I mean, that's another weapon in our arsenal, so to say.
And if you're like, Ray Graham Association, we have a site that people get services at during the day that, because of the nature of the men and women that are there, we'll probably continue to have a nurse there that will pass medications and do treatments during the day, because that's what people will need. But for, a lot of other people, they don't need a nurse to give them a medication. And it's not a large number of people getting medications. It's smaller groups of people. It's a couple of people at noontime. It's very manageable. If we can do it in Scylla, I don't know why we can't do it
And there's no good
there.
rationale that can say it's okay in Scylla and not okay in.
And your same staff do it. If they work overtime in Scylla,
Right.
then they're the same people doing it in the home.
DT also includes people from ICFPD,
It
which
does.
is public health, which then I think
Right.
complicated the whole thing. Because it'd be one same thing to say, well, if we're doing it in Scylla, we should be able to do it in DT. But then what about your people from your ICFPD and your people who live at home with mom and dad and
we
Right.
so there's more people involved than just
will
Scylla.
cover 16 beds.
Yeah.
So already in the
Sure.
ICFD, small ones, you can
Okay.
already do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And generally families think that rule is ridiculous.
Yeah, they
I mean,
do.
I would think so too, but I just remember reading that myself.
Yeah.
Mike willing to take his amendment off the table, I thought that was pretty controversial as well.
I'm sorry?
What was your question?
The senator's amendment to hold ICP staff harmless. I thought that was a part of this conversation well that was bring up the work.
Yes, I think that, so IDPH said they're not at all entertaining that. They fully oppose that. And I don't remember, did BIBO agree to take that away? Okay.
The other thing is, have you talked to Kathy Brown, the DDNA, to make sure they're staying strong?
They're not supporting either, Josh?
They had in the past, I had talked, I give her a bunch of information. That'd be a surprise, but I have to talk to her tomorrow, I'll ask her Thursday.
I read the situations, I think this requires further discussion, we should be cautious. I think if there are any opportunities to negotiate.
What did you say, Josh? Opportunities to negotiate?
I mean, this is one on our list of things, but I think
Yeah.
we take a step back and reflect on what the priorities the board has established.
Yeah.
And where we invest our capital. Obviously, this is something that I think members want. Just considering the landscape of where the opposition and the proponents are.
Yeah.
Considering, I mean, there are different elements in play. I guess I would say we take a step back, maybe it's a small group of members, think about the opportunities to negotiate.
Okay. I think that's a good idea.
So that's all for the bill updates. Do either one of you want to talk about the DSPs, We Are DSPs campaign update?
We know we all want to talk about it, Josh.
Yeah.
Come on up here.
Things are progressing, I think, with the effort. We just sent an update and a request for some further action at the membership this morning. The coalition, I think, is really picking up steam with respect to various elements, setting up certain activities. There are a series of regional advocacy forums for coalition members and non-members alike that are being set up for April and May. And so there will be media advisories sent out for that as well to generate some coverage, I think. Again, there are a number of letters to the editors and articles that have popped up, most pleasingly to me, around the state. John Fuelskamp is he in the room? I know you're right in front of me. Down in the Metro East area, had a press conference yesterday, got some coverage. Kim just had a letter to the editor. John's got one covered. Art and Ben and others. I think it's good that we're regionally getting these articles in this issue popping up, considering how many staff persons in the General Assembly and the administration read these papers. And I think we can attribute some of the statements that Demas has made since the meeting that the leadership coalition had with him in January about where he can appreciate the difficult situation this has put organizations in and the need to invest perhaps $1 or $2 in the DSP wages. So I think we're seeing some movement internally to this administration as a result of the media activities, and part of the action alert we sent out encourages more of that. I think we need some more concentration discussions of this in the city of Chicago. Central Illinois, I think we need it. So if you've not drafted a letter to the editor or collaborated with your colleagues on a letter to the editor, met with editorial boards, I would feel free to move forward and do that. With respect to hearings, we're anticipating there'll be a hearing, either subject matter or on the bill itself in the Senate on April 13th. There are some organizational efforts around trying to get a panel for that, as well as a press conference that day. We're encouraging members to submit some statements to us so we can get those scanned and printed off. Once we get closer to the hearing being posted, we'll let everybody know about slipping in support of that. We're working towards the same end over in the House to have a similar hearing either that day or the day after for a similar outcome there. Sponsorships, we're encouraging you folks to do leave behinds with your legislators in case they skip town for vacation, a lot of them do, or to have meetings with your legislators to try to bring on co-sponsors due to some efforts of Kim and some families in the Naperville area. It's a pretty good place that we have a bipartisan bill on this over in the House. The Republican has signed on. Republicans have done so in the past. This is not entirely unusual, but I think it's a good thing to show that there are members of the Republican caucus that are willing to come on to a bill like this. So from my perspective, this is going to, if we're going to get to that outcome of the bill, which is a $15 starting wage, it's going to be a long-term slog. And I think we're on pace to really get this on the priority list for members of the General Assembly, which is what our consultants directed the board to do at the December planning meeting, which is to say once there is an eventual agreement on revenue and a budget package, that you want to make sure you're on that list so that that is one of the priorities of legislators that are looking to be doing what they need to do. In addition, lots of additional information has been provided by way of toolkits that I think have been well done. I encourage everybody to read and disseminate. We're working towards trying to get the website put together. I have a meeting with our IT folks later on this week so that we can make sure we get all the right information out there. Social media is strong within certain age groups, and we're seeing some positive results on that in terms of the number of lives touched and people reached. If you've not shared the Twitter and Facebook information with your staff and your individual family networks, I encourage you to do so.
What's the target audience for the regional meetings?
It's a provider level.
I mean, do we want PSPs there, or do we want ethnic people, who do we want there?
I have not received word that PSPs would be discouraged. I think the originally envisioned, you guys are in the room too, originally envisioned, I thought it was more towards bringing providers that were not aligned with organizations who are more about the effort.
That to me was huge. More providers who are not members of state associations than there are who are. We're trying to reach out to them and get them into the room and get them lined up as well.
Any questions for Josh? I mean, I want to thank all of you for, the hard work that you're doing here, because it's nice to hear that, not that I'm saying Josh is a pessimist, but he's pretty real, and for him to say that he feels like there's a little momentum moving in this direction, I think that's encouraging, but we got to keep pushing really, really, really hard. So, great.
I'm gonna regress to the net passing just a second. At Sertomo, we have a large day program, but we do not have a nurse for day program. We just have residential, and we do not pass beds. Does anybody have a concern that with doing this now, we obviously have some nurse resources we can direct for residential, but we have more people, we got to train staff, we have trouble hiring staff, and we're taking on more responsibility to pass meds in day program when we're not funded to do it, and we're putting more burden on the system.
Personally, what I would try to do is to keep the number of people, because we have a site where we do have a nurse, but we have a number of programs and services that we work with physicians to have different times that medications can be taken. That would still be my first priority to do that for that kind of very reason.
That's what we're trying to do. We try to manage when they take their medications.
But we've had to at times limit people from, what they can do, what they can participate in during the day, because they can't change their medication. So in that instance, I'd like to be able to respond to that in a way that doesn't require a nurse.
Well, I think it's a very good thing, but it's just
it's
something that does cost resources.
Sure does.
And we're just promoting it.
I would try to keep it minimal for me. That would be the Ray Graham way, but do what you want to do. But
Do you want to talk about the
sure,
last
and
meeting?
you
And
know, Michael Diaz from Misericordia is here with us today as well. Art is on the innovative flexible day services. Nancy, I mean, yeah, okay, keep putting your hands up. I feel like we all get together and talk about this an awful lot. So Sheila, how long ago has it been? Has it been a year yet? Oh my gosh, probably. Greg Fenton, Director Fenton asked that kind of a lot stakeholders get in a room together. When I say stakeholders, I mean families, self-advocates, providers, people from the division, come together and talk about innovative and flexible day services. I think it was pretty clear that Director Fenton was feeling some push from families saying we want something different. And that's great, you know, and I'm glad that, you know, we've been having these conversations because there's been a lot of discussion around some things that we think that we can change and that we can do better. You know, of course, one of the first things that we were asked not to do was to talk about rates. But we still talk about rates. We can't
somehow at the end it sneaks
somehow
in.
at the end we got to bring it up every time because we just can't really talk about transforming what people do during the day if we don't talk about a realistic way to actually provide funding to get that done. So we are at the point and you know of putting together some recommendations and already starting to make some headway on drafting some changes to Rule 119. That's an old rule. I mean, I entertained myself like reading it. I hadn't read it for such a long time, and you know, found it amusing of some of the things that are still in that rule. Maybe I should get a life and not, like you said, as my entertainment. But so really, the focus on what we're trying to do with 119, which is kind of a big thing for the people in the room, and hopefully you would appreciate it as well, is licensure is on a building. You know, you come in, they check the water temperature, your, you know, poison control is listed by the phone, and they do various other things, but the licensure is for the building. And what we'd like to do is that there's a licensure for the service or for the program. So then we don't have these, you know, even though they say, well, you don't have to come to a building, well, you kind of have to, and, you know, so that is part of the licensure piece that we're hoping to change. That I think would be most meaningful. BALC is at the table, you know, as well, and they are very open to making some of these changes with 119. Most of what we've done too with 119 is take a look at some of those sections that are no longer relevant, like entrance criteria, exit criteria. I mean, if you're in the waiver, you're in the waiver, and you can choose these services if you want to. The provider still can, you know, say that you're not a good match, but there's so much language in that rule that just doesn't even make sense to what we do anymore, because that rule was created when it was still a grant-funded program. So that was a big piece. We're at the point where we're putting some recommendations on paper, and some other those recommendations that's come out that seems to be really important to people is when someone can't go to a program or a location because it just doesn't fit for them. So that 37U classification of at home, does that really mean that people have to stay at home? Or can we use that as a mechanism for people to have something that's more individualized? You know, then we of course have to talk about rates, because you still get the same $10.39 an hour as you get for people coming to a place. So we're trying to push hard on, is there a way to make the 53R and 53D compatible with the 37U so that there could be a higher rate? So one of the things we're attempting to do is to find opportunities within the existing structure that could be some fixes to make life a little bit better and a little bit more flexible, and then some bigger recommendations around what day services would look like. We've really shied away in this group of talking about employment much, because what we tried to do was talk more about what people do when they're not working. So just keep that in mind as we've been, you know, employment and work is still obviously a very important part of their day. We have a whole other, you know, conversation going on with employment first. So our focus has been around what people do when they're not working. So I mean, Michael and, you know, Art and Sheila, Nancy, anybody else want to jump in? And
I think the 119 work is so important to make it match up with what we want to be able to accomplish moving forward. So,
Are we seeing anything emerge on the part of accreditation organizations like IARF on the subject of innovative services? I haven't, so it's at some point we want to see where they line up
yeah.
too.
You know, we're accredited, you know, CQL, I mean, they don't really talk a lot about programs and services. They talk more about the person-centered plan and having a self-directed day. So, I mean, that's very much their take on what people should be doing during the day, which then kind of, you know, contradicts what we have in Illinois too, you know. So, but that has been their approach, is that it should really be focused on what people want to do based upon their person-centered plan. But I haven't seen anything from CARF about it either.
When is the next, has the next one been scheduled yet?
Meeting? Well, of
Yeah.
course, we meet every other month. I believe it is the 13th of May stands out in my mind. Sheila's nodding her head. And it's not a closed group. I mean, it's, you know, we've had people come and go, but most people come and stay. We're hoping that it's not a group that meets, we're hoping we're not talking about this 2 years from now. We do hope that it, you know, recommendations can be submitted, and then the work of the group might be to push some of those recommendations forward. But I mean, if you are interested, Daryl Jackson is the point person with the division, and I'm sure you could just shoot him a quick email and you would be more than welcome to be there.
I think you're up whenever you're ready.
All right. We'll just go down the agenda here then. Update on the DRS impact survey. So as you remember from last month's meeting of this committee, you advised me to work with other trade associations to construct a survey that we will put out to our collective members to garner your input into the impact your agency has had and your capacity to provide quality services and supports to the individuals you serve from recent both contract changes, policy changes, and just overall frustrations that you have with your local offices with the Division of Rehabilitation Services. I've been working with them to construct that survey, and I had a conference call with both Vicki Keene and Kathy Carmody at the Institute yesterday to go over the questions we have so far, and we, barring any unforeseen circumstances, I've circulated a final draft back to them, and then that survey will be ready to go. Time-wise and process-wise, we had some concern that given the upcoming spring break, that sending it out towards the middle or end of this week would not be the best if some people have taken some time off. So it will go out first thing next week, and we're going to ask for 10 business day workarounds, so about 2 weeks. And then after that, I think the three of our organizations, as well as this committee, is going to have a conversation when we get those results, and we can put them in a narrative form where we go from there. But as you'll remember from my opinion on the issue is that we have an opportunity and really a necessity to make a play in enacting some long-term changes in the way which we do business with that division. They have put into their the VR portion of the workforce innovation opportunity their comments that division intends to go to 100% performance-based contracting within the next 2 years. They've already taken steps to do that, moving away from cooperative working agreements and menu contracts, going to milestone. And their intention is also to do that to support employment. I have some concerns, obviously, not only with that intention, but just with the inability for us to constructively work together. It's been more than frustrating, I know, for decades, but I'm hoping to do something about it. And I'm hoping with the data from our collective members that we will have more than just some statements of frustration, our word versus theirs. We will have some concrete numbers to point towards that they can't ignore or talk around, which is what they've become really good at doing.
Have they shared any SEP performance-based models that they've identified that
Nope.
might be...
Doug Morton casually mentioned Wisconsin, but he did not elaborate anything beyond that. I know there is he intends to convene a work group to discuss this notion of moving towards support or performance-based contracting for support employment, but his own priorities has gotten in the way, and that group has not been brought together yet. I know myself, as well as Don Hespel at Cornerstone and some others, have put themselves up as wanting to be a part of that work group in those discussions, but they just haven't met yet. And no, I have not received any more detail. I have been assured that they do not intend to move towards performance-based contracting for FY17. Perhaps they've identified, and I've asked, but I haven't been given any indication that they may have picked one provider to do it with on a pilot level. But given the state of things right now, I highly doubt that even happened. But I have, because I've asked multiple times, given what happened last fiscal year, are you going to move forward with this? And the answer was no, because I think we did a good job of raising the stink of what they did last year. So that's where that process stands. Now, I want to please have a open conversation about accreditation. Accreditation has been on a moratorium since I think it was 2008, 2009. It was before I came on. That was the economic recession, who I believe was the reasoning why DRS put a moratorium on accreditation. I have it from high authority that a decision will be made one way or the other on accreditation soon. I do not have any answer as to which way it will go. I will be honest with you and tell you that I have a feeling that moratorium is going to be lifted. That's just me. I want to put that out there. No one's given me any solid statements or anything like that. That's just what my read of the situation is. I'm thinking that they're going to lift the moratorium. Which puts into question how the association should respond to that action, whichever way it goes. Because I know that some of you are adamantly for or adamantly against accreditation. That's just the reception I've gotten when I've discussed it with all of you. So I just want to have just a conversation. What are your feelings? What are your feelings? Where do you stand on accreditation of your VR programs? What are the problems that it creates? What are the benefits that being accredited provides? I will also mention that it was, I think, 4 years ago, there was a subcommittee the FAC put together that I was on with Bob Lindbergh from FACO, in which we advanced some recommendations that increased the financial threshold for which an organization must be accredited. Because right now if you have contracts with DRS, I believe it's $20,000 a year or less. You don't have to be accredited. More, you have 3 years to come within to meet that mandate and become accredited. But we also did, we as part of the FAC, it was the consensus of that subcommittee to advance the recommendation to increase the financial threshold. Maybe we'll see something come out of the director where they speak to those recommendations, because they've been sitting on a pile somewhere for 4 years. But please just provide me with your opinion on the matter, because it's what I needed in order for me to respond appropriately.
I would just say that we're hearing the same thing from our local office that the moratorium is going to be lifted. So I think that we do need to have a position on how we're going to address it. From ours, we are not accredited, and literally we would not be in favor of the requirement for accreditation.
So my thought is, like, we're accredited and pro-accreditation. In this context, I can't say accreditation unless they're going to fund it. So insane in my mind, not have an increase for 8 years, and go back and say, you can now pay for something you don't have the money to pay for, that I already using to pay for something else to survive. I would tell them, no.
If the moratorium was based on our financial situation hasn't changed.
It's gotten worse.
What is their justification that, of all of the programs and services that we all provide, why is it so important that our employment services, that is not, doesn't touch people 24/7, doesn't, why is it so important that that program be accredited?
Go ahead, Gus.
Well, they sent it to their legal department.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that it's based on the Rehabilitation Act, that there's some language that they really are only supposed to fund accredited programs, and that's what they're going to hang their hat on.
You have a new director and a new administration, and I don't think I'm paraphrasing the director when she said I want to follow the rules. But we also have administrative precedent for them having a moratorium in place. So I don't.
How many programs are not accredited? Impact?
I don't have a good answer for you.
Is it worth fighting?
I also don't believe that they have a legitimate understanding for how much accreditation costs, even if you get only your VR program accredited, if that's an option, because, and I'm not paraphrasing because it pissed me off so much. When we talked about this 4 years ago, one of their staff said, well, if the providers can't afford it, make them have a bake sale. So, I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. You know, I don't want to stir up a riot, but I just want to let you know that's what we're dealing with. I don't think, and there's many other aspects in which I don't think that they have a true understanding of the cost that it has to your agency. So
I think the pro accreditation, and maybe it's proved to not be an issue because we've been 4 years and there are people who are providing services who are not accredited. But I think the part of that was that's going to open the door to all these mom and pops and all these individuals. And I can just go here and we have discussion at the FHC meetings about them using, temp agencies and headhunters and not using the CRPs and they're trying to be innovative in where they're going to get play. And I think that was part of but these people are not accredited and you don't know, and that was part of it. And maybe it has proved to be a moot point because it's been 4 years. And if the people who have come to the table who aren't accredited are reliable organizations and not mom and pop type things, trying to get rich quick kind of schemes. And
so it's a separate department.
So
home base is doing that same thing. I mean, those are using the dollars for employment stuff. That's not accredited.
And I haven't gone over the rule or looked at the accrediting bodies in some time, but I guess that'd be another question that I'd want to bring to all of you. Given which way this thing goes, are some of you accredited by an agency that's currently not covered in the administrative rule? Because that was another part of those recommendations I spoke to that we put together 4 years ago. Is we added some bodies to what is listed under the rule, and I think we might have taken a couple off, and we definitely gave the director discretion to add bodies to that rule at their discretion, or accept different accrediting bodies if they weren't specifically listed under the rule.
Now I'll go back to Kim's point.
Yeah.
If you're going to accredit anything, you worry about where people are responsible 24 hours a day. If that was really a quality of life perspective, that's what you would worry about. And I would say if they were arguing that their legal department, then we could say, can you show us that? And are we sure then that all other states are demanding that their providers also be accredited?
Right. How does BQM fit into this with respect to looking at the waivers? Maybe if we didn't have BQM a long time ago, they're looking at all the waiver stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if we got rid of them, use that line for credit.
Yeah, and I asked because there was at one point where the division was offering up Section 530 reviews where they had DRS staff come out and do their review under the rule. That's not going to be an option. I already asked, or at least that's what their response was so far. Doesn't mean we can't continue to push that issue as well, but that was their response, is their staffing capacity prohibits them from being able to provide that service anymore.
Nobody looks at ours except for car doors, if and when they've ever come out. But other than that, I mean, as far as bulk, they don't look at anything that with our doors contract.
Okay. Well, I wanted to put that out. Food for thought. Go ahead.
Of all the programs that I run, accrediting that one is the largest waste of time to have. What's in employment services that you need to accredit?
But it's huge when CARF comes out, though. When they come
that's because they don't have anything else they can look at.
They'll bring 3 surveyors for 5 days, and one of them will spend exclusively on our doors contract, which is probably not even 10% of our total agency budget. But it's amazing the amount of time that CARF will spend on our employment, accreditation. Yeah.
I'm not arguing with you, but I'm just saying, thinking from their perspective is they want some mechanism of people on the ground doing a visual overview of the programs that they're paying for.
I mean, Doors has been the same for years. They have no ability to check their egos at the door, and never have.
Well, yeah, that's definitely have a cultural issue as well.
Yeah.
Definitely won't argue with you on that one.
I would say that of all the, my attitude is of all the programs we do, that's the least important that needs accreditation.
I would just scream loud about money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Scream loud and loud.
I mean, right, what has changed? Nothing, I mean, if anything, on the DRS side of things, it's gotten worse because we're not getting referrals. We're not getting, the milestone contracts have all changed, or menus have changed to milestones, or whichever way. And there's been some.
And when CARF does come in, then they deem you practically on the fact that you're not doing all this innovative when your hands are tied because of what you're getting from Doors. So they're comparing us to the nation and what they're doing from an employment perspective. And we're going, you can talk to us for 3 days if you want, but I'm here to tell you, I don't know what you think is going to change. So.
I think Art raised a good point, Cyrus. If we can find out if other states are requiring this,
definitely.
And they're kind of, how does it work?
Okay.
Just one note of caution would be that they did change the rate for the total rate.
They did.
Placement and the SEP rate went up. So whenever you're talking about when the last increase was.
That was 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, I was thinking about that. It was the ICG, I think, was the group that did that. And
quite often.
We raised your rates once.
Yeah.
Don't you forget.
Ben, you were going to say something?
I mean, yeah, the other side of this issue, but I think it's a small cost over 3 years if you have CARF, you have it accredited. And I get it, we have net increases. But I don't know, I guess at the end of the day, is it worth fighting? Does it put us in a bad position if we're trying to get something else out of it?
Would you want to survey people quickly? I mean, I'm just wondering, because there's a lot of people that's not here, that to your point, Ben, how big of an issue really is it? We're going to continue to be accredited.
I mean, so to me, it's a small cost for 3 years.
Yeah.
But I think even if those of us that agree with you, I think Art's position is the strongest position we've got.
Yeah.
That's hey, pay for it.
Yeah.
But the situation is no better. In fact, it's worse financially. So if you're going to take the moratorium off, then pay for it. If not, there's no reason to take it off.
The other thing I'd add is if they are going to do moratorium for those who are not accredited, there needs to be a time frame.
Absolutely.
There has to be that's not a short process.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think if they did it similarly to last time where they're planning to do it, since the rule says that you have 3 years to become accredited if you're over a certain financial threshold, I would expect reasonably that would be the same time frame you would be looking at. But I can't. We're all
just put it in advance for 3 years.
Yeah, but this is speculation until we know what they're actually going to do. This could all be for nothing. And if they come out and they're going to keep the moratorium in place, so I want to put out there as food for thought to get you thinking about it, because I really need your input to help me act appropriately and in the best interest of all of the members.
When you say there's a financial threshold, is it just for the money you receive from Doors or from your organization?
Doors. It's your contract with
And
Doors.
they would raise that, you think?
That was a recommendation of a subcommittee, the Facility Advisory Committee, that we put together 4 or 5 years ago. So that was just something I was.
You're paying for performance, so when you pay for performance, you're not supposed to focus on the minutia, but on the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that that's another reason. What is it that they want from that? If they're wanting it, they're paying for performance. They want people to get jobs.
Maybe a query then.
I'm happy to put out a survey. I certainly know that we do it a lot, so I don't want to over survey the members, but I think this is one that
Just if you feel like you need to
I
ask.
feel like it's worthwhile. Okay. Last issue, an update on the Employment First Provider Transformation work groups. For those of you who weren't here last month or not up on this one, there are several elements of a strategic plan that's forthcoming for Employment First implementation, and provider transformation is one element of that plan, and it's currently underway in building a draft set of recommendations to be put into a work plan. We discussed it last meeting. I shared some frustrations that myself and some others involved were having in the time frame in which we were being asked to put together this big set of recommendations for provider transformation in the matter of a couple months, when some other groups that were involved on other areas of the plan had many months. Didn't seem fair and it didn't seem reasonable. So myself, as well as some other people involved, sent up the flagpole our concerns and our request for a time extension, and it was denied. Where we stand right now is that the work groups are continuing to meet, and we have put together a initial draft of recommendations for the various areas, and we met last Monday to discuss those as a group. They're being circulated to other members who are not part of one of the 5 activities. There's 5 different activities, and everyone's got a chance to comment. The teams are going to come back together. We're going to finish those recommendations, and then they're again going to go off to other members of the public, and the state agencies are being circulated through the state agencies right now as well. But it's all going to happen again. And I mean, the way that I'm approaching this now is that if this is the direction, or if this is what they want, and they want more of a plan for a plan than solid set of recommendations, then we continue to be at the table, and we're still going to be able to impact the outcome, whatever it may be. We're still engaged in the process. Yes, do I see a loss of opportunity to advance a solid set of recommendations that could achieve some tangible outcomes right away? Yeah, I do. But am I totally thrown off by putting together some parameters for what we'd want to see in a continuation of a process of planning and implementing? No, because we're still going to be at the table, and we're still going to be able to affect the process and the outcome. So that's where we stand right now. If anybody has any questions about this specifically, I'd be happy to answer them. If you want to talk another time, I'm certainly open to do that as well. Or if anybody involved has anything else. No? Okay, then I think we're about done. So I just want to say, we didn't introduce at the very beginning. Most of you know Bill, but all of you may not know Michael Diaz as well from Misericordia, chair and vice chair of the employment committee. They're going to be working with me to build the agenda and advance our items. I also just want to say that I foresee this as being much of an actionable committee, as it is a committee of discussion and planning. And if there are ever areas of employment services that you feel are not being addressed, please feel free to contact me. This is your committee. It's not our committee, it's everyone's. So we're all in it together. So if there's ever anything that you feel that we need to be discussing that we're not, say so, and I'll make sure that it is. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. OIG gives me such a headache. OIG gives me such a headache when I think about, well, this could work,
I went
and
to
then
a
I'm like,
WIOA
oh,
meeting. I'm actually
that
on
would
our
never work. Or like,
awesome. Good.
Yeah, and it was even before this came out. And because I talked to Bailey board prior to that, they said, well, they're like a subcommittee, like a disability subcommittee within WIOA. You know, and how we've talked about that, and even Van,
like what DDD
work at the local workforce council, and I'm thinking, I don't know where to proceed any further, because ours is an active, and I mean, they hit all kinds of rally points for doing things well and spending their money the way they're supposed to spend it, and they get special grants because they have high marks, and so I mean, it's an active, but they just sort of like, we don't do a disability course.
One of the new, I guess, the way that this Workforce Investment Act was intended, what it was intended to do is to bring together the various titles under the Rehabilitation Act.
There's like 9 partners.
There's 9 partners, and there's 4 titles, and one of them is VR.
And, right, like verbal abuse.
What they're trying to do is bring all those together to bring more innovation and collaboration amongst traditional VR providers.
And that's the thing. There's such for the.
And one of the things that we asked for in our comments,
I don't mean to interrupt you because I want to hear the rest of that.
That there be a disability-focused subgroup committee of every local workforce investment board, not just the ones like yours that take it upon themselves to do so, but everyone, and one at the state board as well. So you're talking about employment and workforce issues at every level, disability
that was her response to
because I think that's one of the
delineating
things
a
we're
specific
lacking,
definition.
or we have, is a disconnect between the traditional
if you
employers and
if you
providers.
explicitly
You know,
define
beyond
something,
what you do
then
yourself as an agency
like,
and what our state
that's
PR
how you can
agency
pick
does
over
itself,
minor things to like
it's
beef
not
you up.
enough to truly bring the two
Why do they
systems
look
together.
at
I think that's what they're hoping for. So I'm glad you're doing it because I've encouraged everybody at the FAC to do it, to get involved at the local level.
I mean, and I think even looking at the.
Yeah, I know, Van. Van's great. I love
Yeah,
Van.
then see, and Van's involved at the regional level, but they got that really meeting now from Wheelock.
So,
I'm not
but the
invited
way
to
that
it
it worked
because it's certain
in North
partners
Dakota,
that are
if I recall,
invited to it.
goes into
He's
the
actually
portal. And
writing,
anything that's flagged as
the
significant
workforce
that
board
requires an
23, he's
investigator
actually
to come out.
writing their
There's a,
plan,
you know, they
their
call you, they
regional
come out,
plan,
they
come
do
out,
it, and they do
right.
it.
He's been
But the
assigned
rest of the
that
stuff goes into
that,
a
and
database.
so he's
that-
really
Which
involved.
they still
Then you
see
have
and
to
they
Then when I
say,
asked
yes,
him
they
about
have it,
this,
they have access
he's
to it.
like, "Well, I don't really
Depending
know
on
how
what
that
it is, the
landed."
provider's required
And
to
I'm
put in
going,
a follow-up
"Well,
action,
you don't know, man."
put in, the results of
know
the
how we're going
investigation,
to-
what you've got.
Well, one, we have to wait for the final rules to come out.
And
And
they
we're also,
can then
the
run,
federal
like,
government
monthly
just
or
put out some
quarterly
guidance
reports
on
for
like
the provider
administrative
to kind of then look at.
administrative things that the
Several
state needs to be doing to come in
unknown
compliance with the law, and I
Yeah.
think that's
Let's
gonna
come
be
in
one
and
of
not like
them.
beat you up, but let's
And
talk about what's happening here.
brand new,
So do you have
it's
a
one of those things that
contact
it's gonna
still
work,
there that I can
work
like
itself out, hopefully, as long as we,
I can
yeah, as
like-
long as we continue to stay
Okay.
engaged, then
because I did a
hopefully it'll
lot
work
of,
itself in a way that
Okay.
addresses our issues.
And because that's already like a set system, it's not this like pie in the sky idea where
Yeah.
we're like, okay, let's figure out how this can work. Like that already exists. And that works. And so, and that's the thing is that, so maybe we approach this at first different, you know, maybe not in the best way where we were talking
Good.
so much about, well, why don't you let providers investigate minor things? And they were so not about that. They're so not trustworthy of not you guys necessarily, but all the rest of providers that are not
If you want
trained.
lunch, just
Right,
provide
because
it.
there's
I think,
like
there's a
50%.
lady down there. I'll take
Right,
her
and
name
so
down,
we're like, okay,
but
well, this
it's,
makes a whole lot of sense
it's
now.
all included.
But if it's not
You know,
under the
you're-
purview
yeah,
of
you're
the provider
going to the
anymore,
board meeting, you're welcome.
it's still under their purview, but they're not.
Yeah, it's a board meeting. Our board meetings.
They can't claim they've not
If
seen it,
you
but
want to
they're
get
just not
lunch
gonna
and
swag it.
listen in and
Like,
see how the
you know,
discussion
like in the way that you're
they're
talking
open.
about through that
So the only time they ever
recording
close is
system,
when they go to executive.
theirs
Just
technically.
barely.
Where's that at?
It's right in there in the glass door.
So it's not
So that's why I say if you want to grab lunch and hang out, then
Right, there's no bifurcation.
a lot of members do.
Right.